Hello everybody, I'm back with another video for you today, and I want to give some thoughts and impressions on Draft, the new game mode in Gwent that's replacing Arena, give some feedback, some thoughts, a couple of suggestions for how to improve it, as well as, balancing and fixes that they should probably do and all that good stuff, and in general, how good is it and whatnot. So first things first, personally for me, I'm not sure this format will have too much longevity, just because I'm not a huge Arena Draft player in general, and particularly in Gwent where I'm more sort of focused on the constructed side of things. Personally not going to be the biggest kind of format for me. So I'm going to give suggestions which are going to be helping other people probably enjoy it, and yeah, just keep that in mind, keep my perspective in mind as I start to talk about these things. So there's a couple of points I want to make, some which have already been made by people I'm sure, but they are important to repeat, I think. The first is that at the moment in the draft there are a couple of janky things going on. There's a little bit of a problem, I think, with provision balancing of cards in comparison to one another, card packages, and also in the algorithm and how it works later on in the draft. I think that it's not intentional, as far as I'm aware. I think I saw a Reddit comment by Jason Slammer which said the algorithm is not working entirely as it's supposed to. But let's just run a little quick draft here. I'll see if I can show you what I'm talking about. So whatever, we can take whatever cards we need to. But pretty much the core issue with the algorithm here, not really sure I need to explain it, but it's basically that sometimes, or in fact more often than not, later on in the draft you're going to get offered cards which don't actually do anything for your deck, which you can't really afford to use. An example here would be like Foglets, for example. If we don't have any consume, we do have consume, so that's not a thing, but quite often you're going to get, for example, syndicate cards towards the end of a draft which aren't actually very useful. For example, here we're getting coins. Okay, we can take coins now, but are we then going to find anything to work with the coins in the last couple of packs? Well, probably not. It can happen, but here you see we just don't get any more syndicate stuff. So something's a little bit wonky with how the draft algorithm is working there, in terms of you're getting offered syndicate coin cards, which obviously would rather you to have some nice big profit guys in theory. I mean, this package kind of works on its own, but yeah, generally there's a bit of an issue there in terms of certain card packages just showing up randomly with no bearing on what you've already picked, and I think that should be fixed. Other than that, I think the draft works pretty nicely. It kind of gives you different options. So far from what I've seen, definitely taking a certain card at the beginning has a really big impact on how the draft goes. I think maybe that should be toned down a little bit, and instead the first sort of few pickups that you get should be more prioritized, because it feels a bit weird if you're playing sort of Siege NR and then you just get a bunch of Siege machines and that's all the deck is working with. But obviously you need some synergies here and there. I guess I just like a bit more flexibility if it's possible to find a way to do that with the drafts, because with this combined with the problem with the algorithm at the moment, it feels like you're very much shoehorned into a couple of options, especially later on in the draft, and you don't have too much flexibility, not too many different synergies from different factions coming into play. You often will end up playing just kind of a weaker constructed deck, or a one faction or two faction deck with a bunch of nutty thinning cards or wombo combo cards. Doesn't feel like super deep, and not a huge amount of cross-factional synergies and stuff going on. So yeah, if there's a way to sort of make the draft a bit more flexible, I think fixing the algorithm towards the later stages will help. And yeah, if you can maybe get some packages from different factions working together quite well, that could be good, because I feel like right now there's not a huge overlap between any of them. Maybe you pick, I don't know, whatever it might be, aristocrats, and then it offers you vampires. That'd be cool, for example. I don't know if that's something that's in the game, but just a bit of synergy from the different factions, because right now it doesn't really feel like the draft promotes that very much, and you end up playing just kind of piles of jank or thinning guys, or just sort of a bad constructed deck, or maybe a good constructed deck for whatever faction. So that's the first issue, the algorithm and the flexibility of the draft, I think. There's one more issue which I'll try to showcase here, which is to do with sort of the provision ratioing of decks. I've gone through many drafts, as have other people, and there seems to be a pretty wide margin of sort of provisions you can get throughout a draft if you pick certain options. That means one player can end up having sort of 30 or 40 provisions more or less than an opponent, in theory. That amount of provisions is just ridiculous. Like, to have that much difference between two decks, that's like, you're not even playing the same game at that point, really. Imagine your constructed deck if you had 40 less provisions. Like, you're not going to stand any kind of chance. So it's a similar kind of issue here. Most of the time, people are not going to be able to draft that low in terms of provisions because, you'd have to pick often the worst options to get that. But it just highlights that quite often there's not a huge amount of choice going into the decision, as you're just going to pick whatever's like good provision-wise. Like, am I really going to pick Ulgod? That might set me along a path of doing some Mimi, whatever. But realistically, you're just going to take Harold because it's just a better provision card, whatever. And you're going to build your deck from there. And this is what I wanted to talk about next, which is these diamond packages. When these show up, these are usually really, really good. Not all of them are. This one's okay. You've got the Osrael Egon one, which is really powerful. When these guys show up, it feels like it kind of takes the other picks quite a bit down in terms of which one you want to go for. And that applies in general as well in terms of the provisions that each package costs or that you get with each package. Not so much of a big thing here. This is not a huge provisional package, but generally the point is some packages are very, very provision heavy and just better than others, and often they're going to jump out and you're going to have to kind of pick those and not have a great choice. If you look at Hearthstone, when you are off, or even most drafts to be honest, if you're offered one of these good packages or good cards, then the other options are also going to be equally good, because then you actually have a decision to make. Whereas here, most of the time, the jewel or the diamond option, or even some of the other packages are just so much better than the others that you just end up picking them, even if your deck isn't building for that. And that can lead to, like, as I said, less decision making in the draft, which isn't so much fun, and also piles of janky, just thrown together and not relying on synergy decks that you see quite a bit of in here. So I think there should be some kind of provision balancing, or they've clearly tried to weight the value of the packages, but I think that is a little bit off and not quite right. Cards aren't given the same value, and there's clearly sometimes these big packages coming in and they're not being balanced out by having two other good options to pick. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem in my view. Last couple of points. So yeah, in terms of improving that stuff, that would be great for the draft process. For the gameplay itself, for the experience, I guess, of the draft, I think there's a couple of things you should probably think about changing. The first is playing for rewards, or is there any, MMR reason to play? Are you climbing a ladder somehow with this? Is there an entry cost? There needs to be something that dissuades players from just redrafting over and over again, trying to find the best deck. That's going to take away the fun for the people who just want to see what they get and, play the deck that they get through the draft mode. So that's a pretty big one that needs to be addressed when this actually fully releases. The other thing, and as I said, that could be MMR, so if you abandon drafts, you get lower MMR or whatever, or it could just be rewards or whatever it ought to be. It probably needs to be an entry cost if you don't do MMR, etc. And the final thing, I think, which would really help, if you've played Runeterra Draft, you're going to know what I'm talking about here, but I think the draft should progress as you go to give you an incentive to keep playing it. I know this doesn't happen in every draft, but I think Runeterra adding that was a really good decision, because it keeps you interested in the deck that you're playing. Basically, you're going to unlock cards as you go through the game. So you maybe play 3 games, 2 games, and then you unlock a new card for your deck. Or you can swap out a bronze card for a gold card. If you wanted to put a Witcher or Gwent twist on this idea, you could have it be a card from the opponent's deck, maybe one of the opponent's better cards. You have the option to swap out a bronze of yours, or just add an extra gold into your deck if you so choose, after winning against an opponent or whatever. So that would be a really nice thing. I think, I'm not sure they'll be able to implement that too easily, but I think if you added that, it would really make people enjoy the whole process of getting to the maxed out, most powerful version of your deck in the draft run. And yeah, it's just something that Runeterra did. They've kind of copied the Runeterra draft here, but haven't implemented that, which is a little bit strange to me. So I'd recommend they do that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess lastly is the leader abilities. Could maybe do with a little bit of adjustment here and there. I mean, obviously there's going to be some leaders that are better than others, but yeah, definitely not sure how I feel about some of that at the moment. And also some of the syndicate leaders, for example, kind of force you to probably play a full syndicate deck for the most part in order to get the most value from stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure what to recommend, but the leaders feel a little bit off for me personally. But let me know if you guys agree or disagree with that. With that being said, that's all I really have to say about this. Overall, it's actually better than I thought it would be. Probably for myself won't have too much longevity, but yeah, definitely also needs some improvements, but I think it's doable and can end up being a pretty okay draft mode. Probably better than old Arena was, but maybe some of you will disagree with that. Anyway, that being said, let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this finds the ears of the necessary people, and thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.